Hi friends, if you don't already know me, my name is Kenya and I have lived in a van for the last 3.5-ish years. I did this crazy thing where I painted my entire van, my whole 9'6" van by myself. Just me, no help from anyone. And it looked like this before. And now it looks like this. And it's been about a year and a half since I did that, so I wanted to share my story and let you know a little bit about how I did it if you're curious, or if you are someone who just wants to know how a tiny little girl painted a whole van. I'm going to share that story. So for anyone looking to do this, I will tell you a little bit about my process. I bought my van in 2021. It had like minor bodywork damages on the outside, but it was fully functional and in good condition otherwise. My budget at the time wasn't huge, so I was just really happy to have a van that had everything else I was looking for, and a little exterior damage was okay. There were some spots that did have rust, and I have a 2006 Dodge Sprinter, so it's a T1N Sprinter, and those are notorious for rusting and getting really bad body damage. So I knew that going into it and I accepted it fully. What I did when I bought was that I bought like wire brushes, sandpaper, some gloss paint, and I just did minor ding fixes, and that worked for a good amount of time, but didn't necessarily feel like it matched my soul. After you live in it for a while, you're just like, this is nice, but I want something just a little bit nicer. So when I decided to paint my van, it was more of a mode of self-expression. My van was very dry for what I felt like my personality was. It's your home, you see it every day, you want it to look pretty, and there's only so much you can do. So actually what I ended up doing was buying these little magnet flower stickers, and then I stuck it around, and it felt really pretty, but it just wasn't really sustainable, and I knew that I wanted something that blended in a little bit more, and that's when I started considering a full body paint job, because it would help me with the rust prevention overall in the long term, and it would also help me drive something that I felt more proud of. And so I started investigating how much that would cost and how to do it on your own, weighing out my options. I remember this was almost 2 years ago that I painted it, and I thought originally I'm gonna do it. I planned it out. I was like, I'm gonna do it in the winter time because that's when I am doing less traveling. I thought I was gonna maybe drive it down to Mexico, to Baja. I'm a part of a few really good Facebook groups that I was just doing a ton of research on. The process of painting the van took about a month to fully paint, and that is because I painted it in the winter in my sister's in New Mexico, and at the time there were a lot of wind gusts. And you can't paint when there's dust blowing on the wind, because then all that dust is going to go into your fresh coats of paint. So there was a lot of waiting, and I was one person doing it every day. I'll go into the actual process more of me painting and break down the process for you. It was not easy, but I am 100% so happy I did it. Would I do it again? Not for anybody else's van. I would definitely only do this for myself. It was a learning experience, but I will tell you all about how I did it if you're curious. Okay, a little bit about my planning process and inspiration. So, like I said, I'm a part of a few really great Facebook groups. For my van in particular, it's a T1N Sprinter. There's tons of resources available online, and people have done this before. There's also some really great YouTube videos that I found from people painting their vans. I can link those in the notes as well. But I researched this for about 3 to 4 months. I thought about it for like 6 months or longer. I thought about it for a while before actually acting on it, but I thought about what it would cost me to take the van and get it painted somewhere. Unfortunately, that was really expensive. I thought about driving my van down to Baja, Mexico, where the cost of getting it painted would be slightly cheaper. I found some prices there, and getting it painted would be about $2K. I was down to pay that. However, it would be the task of having to drive my van down to Mexico. That on its own, I thought was more of the deal breaker. I wasn't able to do the drive down with a caravan of friends, and then it just seemed like it was not going to happen that way. So then I started researching what it would take for me to paint it on my own. And so, based off these Facebook groups and the YouTube videos that I found, it seemed really manageable. My van is a whole 9'6", so I knew it was going to be a process. I knew that it was going to take time, but the winter time, I just reserved 2 to 3 months of my time to do it, and I did it. So if I'm a tiny girl who can do this, I think you can too. So the materials that I used and some tips that I found when you're thinking about painting your van, one of the main concerns is making sure that the paint lasts, right? So you really, 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 really want to make sure that you do the prep work right. I know that some alternative painting locations that I found that where people took it and found success were Mako, Maaco. I'll try to link that in the show notes, but basically that was a really good alternative that was also more affordable, but it still was more expensive than doing it yourself. Okay, so I will go through the list of everything I bought so I can tell you how much it costs by details. First went through and I did the headlights because they were oxidized, so I wanted to polish those out and have them looking brand new. I spent a total of $31.60 with tax. I bought 4 things and it took me probably 2 hours to do both headlights because the spray paint needed some time to dry. And then for everything for the body, I spent a total of about $322-ish to get everything that I needed to paint the whole body of the van, to prep the whole body of the van, to prep the underliner of the van. So I think that is a pretty good cost. I think one thing that I'm not taking into account was the cost of my time and how much that took out of me, because it was just me painting it in these windy conditions and it was hard. I remember there were days where I begged my sister to help me, and she was in med school, she's finishing now. She would get home in the evening times and then just come look at me sometimes like, oh, like that looks really good, or wow, you missed a spot there, just to entertain me. Yeah, I think the most expensive thing was my time. But like I said, I knew that I wanted to do this, so I had already dedicated a couple months of my time for this. Okay, so a little bit about the preparation. The first thing you have to do before you start painting your van is wash it. Wash it from head to toe. Remove everything from the outside. For me, I had my surfboards on the roof rack, had to take those down. The magnets that I had as decor, I had to take those down. Then I had to start taping all of the little numbers, the little symbols on the van. I taped the areas below the van because I wasn't going to paint those. I was going to raptor line those. Basically just separating everything that I wasn't going to paint in the base color. The next step was cleaning and sanding all of the rust spots. This is probably one of the hardest parts. I actually bought an orbital sander and that made my life a whole lot easier, but you want to sand down those rust spots because if you don't and you paint over it, that rust is just going to come through, it's going to crack the paint, and it's going to come back. So I washed the van, sanded down and grinded down the rust spots, cleaned them with metal prep, and I basically just did that for like 2 to 3 days of my time. When you're painting your whole van, you want to be meticulous, and the preparation is the most important part. You don't want to grind down all the way to the metal if you don't have to. So I was also just trying to take this as slow as possible and as carefully as possible. At this time, I was also still working my 9 to 5 job, which was remote, which meant that I had time to come out here and start grinding from like 1 p.m. to about 6 or 7 p.m. when it got dark. So 2 to 3 days going from 1 p.m. to 7 p.m., I was able to grind down and do the whole van in about that time. And I do have a dent on my driver's side when someone bumped into me, and it looks really ugly. So part of my goal was to also help fix that dent. I bought some Bondo body fix. My goal was to grind down the rust metal, prep it, spray it with this anti-rust spray paint, and then I did Bondo over the dent, and it still looks a little like, that there's something there, but it's not as bad as it was. So it looked a lot better. So some of the challenges that I had, the weather, the size of the vehicle was another factor. Doing it alone was another factor. Feeling defeated on certain days when it just felt like I didn't get anything done. I also had to go over the paint about 3 times. My painting process was doing it with a roller. I know a lot of people buy the spray machine and just spray it, but I hand rolled my entire van from head to toe, from front to back, from hood to bumper. I hand rolled it, so this required a lot of precision. It also required me to buy the right foam rollers. I noticed that for the first coat, it was all right if I used the wool rollers, but for the last coat, the way I wanted it to look was like a smooth finish. So I bought some high density foam rollers, and I had to make sure that when I was doing those last coats, I was not letting the paint dry on them, because if they dried, they would not roll in the same way, and the texture of the van would come out differently. Yeah, it was a lot. And I also was in my sister's driveway, and she was very particular about me keeping her driveway clean and not getting paint on it. I also didn't have a cover over the van to protect it from the elements, so it was just fully out every day, getting exposed. If we're talking about things that I would do differently next time, things I would consider next time if I were to do it again would be considering if there even is a next time, right? Because this was really hard. I had to do it by myself. Maybe if I had a partner or a friend or somebody to help me with it, it would be a lot easier, because it's hard. But things I would do differently next time, I would consider trying to find a place or some sort of cover for the elements. Unfortunately, in this area, there wasn't that, so I didn't have that as an option. It would be really nice to have something to cover my van, or doing it in a garage or a barn or somewhere where it's protected, because then it would take a whole lot less time. Also, next time I would know that I need specific types of rollers for the types of finishes that I want. I would prepare and buy enough of those ahead of time, because when I bought my first gear go around, I bought a certain amount of rollers, but I ended up having to go back and buy more. Rollers make a difference, even on car bodies. If I have any tips for people considering doing this, it would be recognize that you will be saving a lot of money if you do it right, but only if you do it right. Because if you do it wrong, your paint is going to peel, the rust on your van or your car is going to be exposed, and there's more likelihood for it to expand onto other places. So be really mindful of how you handle that rust. I would also do my research on the colors. I chose an almond color. I thought it would be more sand beige, but it's beautiful either way. I was happy with it. but make sure that it is the color you want. Initially, I wanted to do this gray color. Unfortunately, that gray color was not available at Home Depot where I went to buy my paint, so I ended up going with this almond color, which was fine. I was happy with it, but try to think about that ahead of time, plan it out. And yeah, just don't be afraid. Like I said, it was overwhelming for me because I was one person doing it, but I'm so grateful for how my van looks, how my van feels, and just how my personality now reflects because I chose to make this van look how I would want it to look. And I'm so happy with the results. I'm so proud of myself for doing it. It was really hard, but I did it. You overcome 100% of the things that don't kill you, so keep that in mind. Yeah, I will also share the full video of how my van looks now, how it's held up in these last a year and a half, almost 2 years. Okay, this is my van now. Keep in mind, she probably needs a wash, but this is how the paint has held up, and I think it's pretty well. The hardest part for me to do was probably the bottom liner. I did that last and sanded down the plastic and the metal. So the plastic is this part here, but I wasn't really sure how that would hold, and it held up pretty well. I think overall, she looks good. This is the part that I mentioned in the video that had the body damage. Before it was fully indented, and now it's like lumpy, but very, very manageable. She needs a wash, but we're doing good. This is my van, and she's a beauty. I also painted the wheel covers, the wheel caps. That's another part that didn't last as much. You can see they're just a bit red, probably from desert dust. This one's not red. I think that one's partially desert dust, but you can see some of the rust on the bolts that I didn't really care to de-rust coming out. Those are of course replaceable and it's fine, but just something to consider. You can't really tell from afar, but this is she, and she is beauty. I also invite, if you have any more questions, please put them in the comments. I am really excited about creating more content based on my van lifestyle and everything surrounding that, and I would love to help other people who are curious about it or want to make this their dream life. It's definitely one worth pursuing. Thank you for watching, and I hope you can like and subscribe. See you in the next one. Bye for now.